How many Eichels could a YouTube channel cycle if a YouTube channel cycle Eichel trials? And I say trials because that's one of the only words that actually kind of vaguely rhymes and kind of has a meaning of, oh, it's a trial. It's like a mock kind of thing. Let's talk about Jack Eichel again because, man, we've made so many videos about this guy, but for good reason. He is the most important NHL trade target in the league today. And we have ourselves another update as to some of the teams that might be bigger than others in these conversations. Now, last time, when we spoke about Jack Eichel, it was about actually, no, I don't remember the last time. Was it the Chicago Blackhawks thing? It might have been, but one of the bigger, just overall team-wide videos we made for Eichel was talking about some of the teams that were apparently out. It was LA, it was Boston, it was New York. And according to the sources that we had from Fluto Shinzawa to John Hoven to a few others as well, it was appearing that those three teams had taken a step back from the entire Jack Eichel sweepstakes. Okay. So, the question now becomes who is actually in the race. And I know Pierre LeBrun had that list on The Athletic of teams that he feels could actually make a pitch for it, but that was just a list of teams that could do it. It wasn't really a list of teams that he said were actually going in and trying. For LA and New York, we had the insider information come out that apparently they just didn't want to do it. For Boston, it was okay, they just don't really think that it's worth it anymore with the surgery in place. But we have ourselves some word from Darren Dreger, who made an appearance on the Instigator Show podcast on WGR 550 Sports Radio in Buffalo, and his comments are pretty interesting. Now, I will say, this whole thing was from about just under a week ago, so it's not the newest of the new, but I wanted to tie this in with another piece of information that we also have received and try to make a little bit of a digestive food for thought kind of video as to what exactly these teams would want to give up and what they could in the context of an Eichel trade. So, Darren Dreger comes on and he says this: what we should focus on is what we know. We know that the discussions on Sabres captain Jack Eichel have increased over the past week, to the point where I'm comfortable in saying he's going to get traded. There are a number of suitors. He hears that Anaheim is in the mix, and so is Columbus. He thinks that LA will get in the mix at some point. Now, that last part is indeed something we addressed in this video when we spoke about it. How even though John Hoven, who is a pretty much just all-round beat reporter for the LA Kings. He covers the Ontario Reign, their AHL team. He talks about the prospects, and he talks about their proceedings and conversations about the draft and who they might like, etc. When he said that the LA Kings have taken a step back and they're no longer in the Eichel situation, Elliot Friedman went on to this very same show, The Instigators, and he said, yeah, if he is saying that, I have reason to believe that there are legitimate people in the LA Kings organization that are letting him know, because he is just that status of a level of a beat reporter, that he wouldn't say this without actually knowing about it behind the scenes. But we spoke about it in the video that Darren Dreger believes that they could circle back, so depending on what happens, we'll see how exactly it goes down. But for the sake of argument, let's just say that LA is not in. That leaves Columbus and Anaheim as two teams mentioned here by Dreger that are indeed in. Now, we had Chicago, as labeled by the writers on the New York Post, as being a team that is officially in as well. There's that entire Kirby Dach situation, which was absolutely crazy to me, but I think Anaheim's in the mix, so is Columbus. He thinks that LA will get back. I would be surprised, not shocked, but surprised, if Eichel is traded within the next 2 weeks. Pierre LeBrun, I believe, also said that because of how the Eichel conversations have gone and how much it's picked up, he wouldn't be surprised if Eichel was traded before the playoffs ended. And I think if you try to time it right, that could be done within the next 2 weeks. I mean, you have these series, New York and Tampa, Montreal, Vegas. They'll probably both be over by the end of the week, and then you're not going to have a series that takes longer than 2 weeks in the finals, assuming it even goes to 7 games. So, for Pierre LeBrun coming out here and saying that it's probably going to happen, I believe it was Pierre LeBrun. If it's not, then please somebody correct me in the comments. And for Darren Dreger saying that it would surprise him if it was happening, but it wouldn't necessarily be the biggest thing in the world, so he wouldn't be shocked. We have ourselves that conversation ensuing a little bit more with Anaheim and Columbus. In order to push this conversation further, let's go over on to Florida Hockey Now, their latest edition of the Off the Record article, which is a piece where they take a look at different insiders and take their quotes and go off the record with them, goes over the entire scoop here. The Sabres want 4 to 6 components for Eichel. This piece opens up talking about how the Chicago Blackhawks thing was brought up. We talked about that in the previous video already. According to one NHL executive who spoke to Off the Record the past week, the current ask doesn't stop at just what was highlighted there, which was Kirby Dach and the 11th overall pick. If an organization wants to snag Jack Eichel, it would need to surrender 2, 3, or even 4 more components. This monumental trade demand has other NHL executives wondering if Kevyn Adams is misreading the market. Here's the quote from the NHL executive who spoke to Hockey Now. They want 6 components for Eichel. 6! I get that Kevyn is in a really tough spot and needs to make sure he can get as close to Jack's worth as possible, but this is just crazy. We're talking about a top 6 center 25 or under, a top 4 D-man 25 or under, a first-round pick, and 3 prospects. In this market, and with so many teams trying to build from within because of the cap, how is he going to get that? And you don't even know about how his neck is going to hold up either. The price, dude, the price for Jack Eichel has apparently gone massive. It's been to the moon, as they say in the stock trading world nowadays. And it's huge because, like, a few weeks ago, we had the conversations from, I think it was Renaud Lavoie on Sportsnet, talking about what he was hearing in regards to the Eichel trade price. Back then, it was considered 4 first-round caliber assets. Now, if it's a top 6 center that's below 25, a top 4D that's below 25, a first-round pick and some other prospects, that's pretty much the same price, if not a little bit more. And it's like, man, didn't this entire surgery thing, the neck surgery that he wants to do but that you don't want him to do, didn't that decrease his value? Isn't it gotten to a point now where other teams are saying, yeah, you know, I would have probably wanted to trade for this guy, but man, that surgery really spooks me out. Sorry, Kevyn Adams, we're not going to go ahead and do this. I'm just way too insecure about how he is going to handle that surgery. Does that not decrease the value of your assets? So, when it comes to this, I mean, Anaheim, you're going out there in a position where everybody is saying that, okay, one of Drysdale, one of Zegras, maybe both, probably not both, but if you can go out there and make a trade with Jack Eichel that doesn't involve Zegras or Drysdale, then you're probably going off laughing. Because, I mean, you have the 3rd overall pick, but this year's draft is a crapshoot anyway, so in my opinion, it's not as valuable as a 3rd overall pick would have been in, let's say, last year's draft, where you would have gotten a Tim Stützle. But if it's Anaheim and they're going out there saying, okay, here's a 24-year-old Jacob Larson, here's a, I don't know, 21-year-old Isaac Lundstrom who you have to re-sign as well, and then a whole bunch of prospects and your 3rd overall pick. Try to keep Drysdale and Zegras. If not, then hey, you're probably going to have to swap in one of those pieces to equalize the overall value, because Jack Eichel, even though he has that surgery thing bugging him, he is still a very valuable asset in terms of contract and the skills that he provides on the ice in contrast. Things just get really weird when you consider that age range, man. Like, take a look at the D-core on the Anaheim Ducks in general. They only have 2 guys under 25. Hayden, Florian Larson, and I guess Jamie Drysdale as well. I know you have prospects there, but if they want a legit top 4 D-man under 25, I mean, so little teams have all of that combined, right? So it's going to be really difficult, I think, if you're prying them away specifically from Anaheim without touching all of your top talent in the future. The 3rd overall pick is nice, but then again, you still have to think about the other stuff. As for the Blue Jackets, oh man, things can get really interesting there, because for Columbus, they are a little bit of a younger team, but they do have their pieces that are questionable at best when you talk about going out there and making a trade for them. I mean, Max Domi is 26 years old, but that guy hasn't really been all too great. Jack Roslovic is here, but I doubt the Columbus Blue Jackets would want to trade him. Emil Benstrom is here. He's 22 years old. You have Igor Chinikov coming into the system, and you probably don't want to get rid of him because he's just getting onto your team. But then on defense, man, Seth Jones is 26, Zach Werenski is 23. I'd imagine you'd have to get at least one of these guys out there, because we didn't hear anything about the Buffalo Sabres wanting a goalie, so I don't know if they would take Merzlikins or Korpisalo, one of the two. They probably should. If you just ask me, I think that's probably the more beneficial route to take, but I don't know if it's something that they would actually explore. And besides, they also have that 5th overall pick, too, in this year's 2021 draft. Again, it's a crapshoot, so it's not really as valuable as it would have been before, in my opinion, but that is still an asset that is there. So, if it's, I don't know, Bemstrom, Werenski, 5th overall, and a whole bunch of other prospects, do you do that? Because at the end of the day, you could start out 2021 with a first line of Laine, Eichel, and Roslovic. This is kind of where capital comes into play, man. I think Columbus does have a few bigger pieces that they would be willing to expend in this kind of scenario if they wanted to acquire Eichel, especially if they're going up against Anaheim of all teams. And it's only really because Anaheim's two untouchables are some of the most valuable players on the squad that actually fit into the criteria according to what we're hearing as to what the Sabres would want. Rickard Rakell is great, he'd probably be a great trade chip, but he's not under 25. Korpisalo or Merzlikins are great goalies, but they're goalies. Apparently the Sabres don't want goalies. So the conversation gets a little bit different. Also with the news that the Sabres would prefer to send Eichel out west would be a little bit more stirring in the Anaheim direction. But at the end of the day, things get really muddy either way. So talk to me in the comments what you think about this idea over here. Out are LA, Boston, and New York. Apparently super in. Chicago. We have Columbus in the mix now. We have Anaheim as well. Talk to me in the comments what you think you enjoyed. This was Josh Rolls 99. And bye.